Are you ready for the weekend yet? We have events, news, and a guest for you to enjoy this Lake Life weekend. Hello and welcome to another episode of Lake Life Weekend Podcast. This is our new season 2019 and our first recording after this winter break, right in time for the coldest days in a decade, I guess. I hope you're all staying warm. I'm very happy to have this recording with Tim Thompson, the CEO of Lake Region Electric Cooperative, which I have been trying to get to meet with for a long time, and it happened, and we are able to talk renewable energies, solar and wind generated electric production in our area, and I think this is a very good and important topic to protect our environments. I'm really happy to hopefully partner with them as a future contributor of content to share with our audience. So stay tuned to our interview with Tim Thompson. And I guess stay warm. Welcome back to this season. We have a lot of interesting recordings coming up. We also are very excited for our event coming in March 22nd, 23rd, again at the Civic Center in downtown Fargo. Thank you very much for Choice Bank as the title sponsor, and they allowed us to give free admission to all our guests this year. So it's a free event. Save the date. Friday, Saturday, March 22nd, 23rd. So now stay tuned to hear the story of Lake Region Cooperative, Electric Cooperative with Tim Thompson. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Hello to our interview part. I'm here today with Tim Thompson. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming. It took me a while to catch you. Thank you very much. Tim Thompson is working as CEO with the Lake Region Electric Cooperative out of Pelican Rapids. And today I was going to talk a little bit about who you are in the beginning, then about the history of delivering electricity to rural communities in Lakes Country, here where we live, and then hopefully we can speak about all the things that you built, and then a little bit into the future, hopefully maybe renewable energies, because you have some projects going as we speak. So maybe you want to introduce yourself, and how did you arrive in Lakes Country?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to participate in your podcast. Yeah, again, my name is Tim Thompson, the CEO of Lake Region Electric Cooperative, headquartered in Pelican Rapids. Been the CEO there now 11 years. Worked in the industry now for over 20 years. I was down in Albert Lea at the electric cooperative there before I came up here to Lake Region Electric Cooperative. Absolutely love working at Lake Region and living in this area, living in the lakes area. Working at a cooperative is kind of a dream job for me, actually. I grew up on my great-grandparents' farm, and so I heard firsthand from my great-grandparents what it meant the day their electric cooperative brought electricity to their farm and how that changed their life and what it did for their quality of life, which is very motivating for me to continue that and make sure that what we're doing at Lake Region is improving the quality of life for the about 28,000 consumer members of Lake Region Electric Cooperative in this area.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's step back a little bit. So your great-grandparents were immigrants and they homesteaded where in Minnesota?
Actually, it was in Iowa.
Oh, Iowa.
A farm in Iowa. And a little Swedish community, actually.
Okay.
And they farmed there. And in 1939 is when the old REA brought electricity to the farm. My wife also grew up on a farm, and an electric cooperative brought electricity to her family farm back in, I believe it was 1941. So a lot of history there, and again, just an incredible story how electric cooperatives formed back in the 1930s.
Yeah,
to bring
the Depression.
The height of the Depression, and how people came together at the local grassroots level. In our case here at Lake Region, people got together in Fergus Falls and formed their own electric cooperative because there was not electricity in the rural areas. And as history has shown, it has been a good program, very successful in the rural areas, and people in the country can have electricity just like people in the towns.
So just for us, I'm very uneducated. So we have Autotel power with this turbine. Was that only delivering in the city? So there was no electricity at all, or like?
Yeah,
So you serve the rural compared to. Can you explain
correct.
that a little bit?
So back in the day, back in the 1920s and 30s, as electricity was getting built out in our country, electricity came to the large cities first,
right,
and then the smaller towns where there was a lot of population. It's very expensive to build all the infrastructure necessary to bring electricity to an area. And so that's why it made economic sense to do the towns receive power first. Right. And those were primarily either investor-owned utilities or municipal utilities, but the rural areas went unserved.
Right.
And so that's when it was evident that the power wasn't going to come to the rural areas, that's when people at the local level across our nation came together, formed their own electric cooperatives, and there's about 900 electric cooperatives across our nation, and I believe it's 42 states.
Sure.
And so that movement started in the 1930s and just continued to grow and blossom.
So we were founded with Lake Region Electric Cooperative when?
1937.
1937.
Yeah, so over 80 years ago.
So this was founded, and so interesting. So was it, how many, 7, 17, 15, how many people came together?
I believe the main, kind of first meeting back in the day in the 1930s was about 500 people came
500?
together. Yes.
In the county of Autotel County then?
That's generally correct. We're a little larger than Ottertail County, but that's really the center of our service territory.
So that's really interesting. So 500 people come together, and then did they bring? Everybody said, "Hey, I'll pitch in $100," or how did that work?
In the beginning, there was a small fee to become a member of the cooperative. I believe it was $5 or $2 or something like that. But even back then, I mean, again, during the height of the Depression, to come up with a few dollars in a totally new concept of an electric cooperative to bring electricity to rural areas, that probably wasn't easy. Can you imagine, getting invited to a meeting today for something brand new for your area and how people would react to that? But there was certainly a need, and the people in the country didn't have electricity, or they're in the dark.
In the dark.
Lower quality of life. Yeah. And what that did to revolutionize our country.
Well, but like to bring this in the 21st century, it was literally a Kickstarter campaign. In a way, it was just not happening on the internet, but the people got together as they did in a church, in a school, or somewhere, and they said, "We need to kickstart something. We want to get out of the dark." So they were forming. They invested. They actually started a company in a way. A co-op is a member-owned organization. It's kind of like a company.
They literally, as I like to say, pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, formed their own cooperative, and here, 80 years later, we have 5,700 miles of power line, 28,000 consumers, 30 substations, and we're doing a lot of new things as well. The spirit of the co-op that it took back in the day to start that, the grassroots aspects and all of that of the original cooperative, I believe it still exists today, and the most important thing that was done back then with the grassroots and the member ownership, the member involvement, still exists today. That's still how we operate. We have grassroots meetings today in small communities, out in churches, schools, etc., where we invite the members in to talk about the cooperative, provide updates and information to the members, really trying to create that member engagement. That part of our business really hasn't changed. We're very obviously local, member focused, and driven by the members who actually elect and vote on our board of directors. We are our territory is divided into 9 different districts. Each district has a board member that is elected by the people that live in just that district. So it's a very local election democratic process that the members have.
So the voice is represented?
Yeah, the voice of the members is definitely representative, and then those 9 board members serve on the Lake Region Electric Cooperative Board of Directors and govern the cooperative.
Sure.
And of course, they hire a CEO, and we employees run the day-to-day business there.
Yeah. No, okay. Really interesting to learn how much you grew, where you're at. I'm still curious. You mentioned the miles of power lines, and that was probably a big challenge. We're talking pre-World War II. We're talking World War II in the 40s. Workers, and then you need obviously copper lines. So I assume it is copper lines. So materials. Like, my question would be, what was the first source of energy? Like, was it a coal turbine? What do you know? What the first? How that?
Yeah,
was
I know our
generated?
first customer of the cooperative. The first line that was built was in the Perham area. I can't say for sure exactly what the original power supply was, but I believe it was more. Our lines were connected into the investor-owned utilities transmission lines and bought power through their system.
So they purchased power somewhere to deliver it to the members.
In the beginning,
probably.
The cooperative did not have generation assets or transmission assets either. So it started with connecting into existing infrastructure was there, feeding off of that infrastructure into our distribution system. Now, over the years, as the cooperative grew and got stronger, we formed our own generation and transmission cooperative that is also a cooperative form of ownership. It's called Great River Energy, headquartered down in Maple Grove.
As a producer?
Yeah, they're the producer. They own the power plants and the transmission lines that bring the power down to our substations that we own, and then we distribute it locally to the local area.
Okay, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So our business model is not only a cooperative at the local level distributing the electricity, but we also, Lake Region is part of owner of a much larger generation and transmission cooperative that produces the power and owns the transmission lines to get it down to our local area. So it's a kind of a vertically integrated cooperative model.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't quite aware of that. I thought we built or we produced. So in the beginning, it was literally the kind of like the city got electricity. Let's say Fergus Falls had that turbine, but the water, they got their energy, and then the people in the country said like, hey, we want to have it too. And then Otter Tail says, we can't deliver, it's too expensive, it costs us $30,000 to bring the line, we'll never recoup that. So you kind of formed a co-op to build the infrastructure in the beginning.
That's correct, and it was all part of originally a federal program called the Rural Electric Administration, old REA, again formed back in the Depression era. President Roosevelt was a champion for rural electrification, and it allowed local co-ops like Lake Region to borrow money from a federal program for the specific purpose of building electrical infrastructure out to serve areas that had never been served before.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fascinating. So we started with, let's say, 500 members. So we come post World War II, 50s. Baby boomers, and then we grow and grow and grow. And you said today we have 28,000 member households.
That's correct.
And meters. Yep. So that is a significant increase. So every year, not that it every year, but every decade it doubles almost the membership, right? 500 to 1,000 is a double. 2,000, 4,000.
Yeah, we add today. Today we build about 300 to 350 new electrical services per year. So we do see some growth. It's slowed down here in recent years compared to maybe the early 2000s.
Well, maybe because we are already so connected. But you are even growing to the state.
Yes. In terms of customers, we're growing. Now with all of the efficiencies and things with appliances and focus on energy efficiency, the actual load growth and how much electricity we sell and how much our members consume doesn't grow much. So we're adding some customers, but as you can imagine, with everything being so much more efficient today, LED lights, for a good example, that cuts the consumption down, and so the actual sales don't grow that much.
That's now I'm going to put you on the spot. Not really, but I was always thinking, how is it that electric companies actually promote efficiencies because actually it hurts their business models. Yeah, it actually cuts in their
You know,
profits. Why is that?
It does, but as a member-owned cooperative, the main thing we're focused on is helping our member owners manage their energy dollars the best that they can. So if we can help a member owner, save on their electric bill, if we can help them be more efficient, if we can help them use energy more wisely, that also is value of being a member of the cooperative.
Absolutely,
But you're exactly right. Any business, you can't spend your money to help your consumers use less of your product. That's a different long-term strategy.
If you're an exception to the rule, it seems, because I am, as a member, I'm interested in getting the best advice. So I want lower cost as a member-owned company, so that actually benefits me even as an owner. So you're the perfect role model to reduce.
Really, one of the centerpieces of our strategic thinking and our strategic plan is energy services, as we call it. We have a very professional team of energy services professionals on staff, always working with members, whether it's lighting solutions, heating solutions. We've kind of gone into some other areas in recent years, whether that's renewable energy, as well as the natural gas, providing natural gas in certain areas. So we've recognized that, like you just said earlier, as we're helping our members consume less through energy efficiency and things, we recognize that we've got to create some other revenue streams. And every time we do that, that's good for all of the ratepayers, all of the members. If we can create a new revenue stream and not add much for cost into the cooperative, that helps us keep our rates stable and very, very reasonable for our members.
I understand. Can you explain again or clarify how large of a service area you are?
Yes, our service territory, we're headquartered in Pelican Rapids. We also have an outpost, as we call it, in Otter Tail City.
Just saw that, drove by it
so
last
we
week.
can service our members out of 2 locations. Our footprint, our service territory, really covers about 3,200 square miles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with the 5,700 miles of power line and 30 different substations spread across that area.
So majority of Otter Tail County, and then a little bit
and
east?
Beyond that. So, our service territory on the west side goes over to the Minnesota North Dakota border.
Oh, really?
On the south side, it's between south of Fergus Falls, but not as far as Alexandria. Is the line. Going to the east, we go almost to Wadena.
Oh, okay.
Down to the Parker's Prairie area, and then on the north we're south of Detroit Lakes. Is kind of the general outline of our footprint.
So can I choose, like, if I live in the territory, because for some reason I'm not a member of yours, but I live on Lake 7. So can I choose? Can I switch, or is it reserved?
It's reserved. There's a very specific. In Minnesota, there's very specific service territorial lines and boundaries between the utilities that were set up years ago.
Okay.
And so it's very, defined. If you live in a certain area, this certain electric utility is your provider, and that's who you will have.
That's really interesting. In Europe, in my opinion, that would be considered a monopoly, because me as a consumer in Europe, I can choose between 17 different electric providers, and they all have to share one line now. So I can just say, this one is cheaper, I'll switch tomorrow. Did you know that? Like in Germany, you can simply switch.
And some of the states in the U.S. have gone into kind of this customer choice environment.
So here, the line is literally owned. So you own your 5,800 miles?
Those power lines are owned by they're owned by the cooperative, but they're owned by the members of the cooperative.
Okay, sure,
they are the owners.
And they're reserved for you. The private property.
Yeah,
nobody can say,
right.
I want to run through it too.
Right.
That's what happens in Europe, it seems.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you use the word monopoly. It generally is that. I mean, there's not customer choice.
Yeah.
But as a member-owned cooperative, we're adding value to the members and keeping our rates as low as possible.
I was just trying to understand. So, just so we know as a consumer, also in Europe, we have all the lines in the earth. I always wanted to ask.
Underground?
Underground.
Yeah.
I always wanted to ask, because we're actually living in Minnesota, and we have ice built up. We have power lines that break every year again. We have outages because of the ice, in my opinion.
Yep.
So why is it not cheaper or long-term more efficient to build them underground? I never understood that. Now I have you here. Can you explain that?
In the beginning, pretty much everything was overhead. Over time, underground is becoming more predominant in our construction. I think of the 5,800 miles of power line, about 1,300 are now underground.
Oh,
so going forward, underground is
a
a much bigger part.
20%.
The costs for underground have come down over the years. There's been, back in the early days of the underground, there was some issues with cable and that type of thing. It's improved a lot. The technology has improved a lot. Less problems with underground. So it is more expensive still.
Yeah.
But we try to put in, where it makes sense, we evaluate that and try to put in underground. I think it does make a lot of sense for some of the reasons you've already stated. Ice storms being a good example.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a growing part of our distribution grid.
So it is changing.
Yeah.
I think they're an eyesore too, by the way. I mean, if you, I don't know how much you travel in Europe, we don't have those power lines. I mean, for some reason they're like this American aesthetic. Like if I go in downtown Fargo and see those wood posts and I see all those electric lines, they're already so antiquated to me. They're already cool again. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anyone, but literally I think they are just very unique to the United States. But I like the picture. Nobody here sees that. For some reason, I think nobody sees that anymore because it's so normal to you. Me, as looking at it from a different angle, they're very dominant. And I think the power lines come into each house. I always think they look dangerous for some reason. So, but I think they're an eyesore and they're a risk. They're dangerous. But I learn we are trying to establish new routes underground. Okay, so as we can afford, as it makes sense.
Yeah, it's really a financial question.
Yeah,
can you afford to, it's really hard to rebuild something that hasn't, you haven't reaped the useful life out of it, to going back in and replace that with underground before it's depreciated, and that kind of thing is very difficult. And these are, electrical infrastructure, they're 30, 40 year assets.
Of course.
They last a long time, and so it's not a quick, fast transition. It's very slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so we have 28,000 members, households. Or we have actually a very slim, lean work body. We have 72 employees. Right?
Yeah, about 72 employees at Lake Region. Yes.
To me, that sounds very lean, but successful as it looks. Now. With the history, we are an 80-year-old organization. You have a lot of experience. You have a lot of success. Obviously, you are still a valuable asset to the people, but you are growing. And now I'm curious about the future. We talk about efficiencies. We talk about converting LED, and I actually was surprised what a huge impact converting the LED lights in my household. I was so surprised how much less my bill was. So I'm converting everything into LED. I was a little bit ignorant, I must admit, but now that is very good. But also with new technologies, wind, solar, like renewable. Can you fill us in a little bit on your past efforts, let's say the past decade maybe? Or whatever renewable. When did you start thinking forward, let's call it? As you know, in Europe, we are very strong about renewable energy. I think Germany already has over 20% out of renewable energy.
Yeah.
And we are actually the leader of renewable energy production. And I'm fairly proud of that. I like it. So I'm very glad to see that you are doing similar things. So can you fill us in on the visioning?
Absolutely, be glad to. Yeah. So again, as a member-owned cooperative, as a member-driven cooperative, we get a lot of feedback from our members. We survey them and that type of thing.
Okay.
And when we look at that information that comes back to us, really there's two main things that members talk to us about consistently. And it's really the core business, which is they want good reliability at fair rates and keeping our rates as low as possible. So that's kind of our our core mission still rates and reliability for our members, that traditional core electric cooperative service. The other things members are very interested in today are the newer things. And while this kind of transition that our industry is going through can be challenging, it's also very exciting. And our board of directors and our employees, we've embraced the future. We've embraced new technology, and we try to lead on some of those things. So over the last decade or so, while we've made sure that our reliability and our rates and cost structure is appropriate for our size of a cooperative, we've kind of done that and then moved on to these newer things. We've done a lot in this new space.
What exactly? Like solar?
Let's go through those.
Okay.
So, we can start with solar. So
you have a little solar park down
we
in
do.
Pelican
Yes,
Rapids.
we do.
Is that a demo or is that actually a source?
It's actually a community solar program. So, back in 2012, 2013, as we started analyzing the cost of solar coming down, we really wanted to analyze that. Instead, the cost for solar
building it
coming down, and we watched that, and it got to the point where we thought we could do our first project. And so what we did was we were one of the first co-ops to do this. We actually built, our employees at Lake Region were cross-trained to build our first community solar program. And what that is, and what's so neat about it is, the co-op built it and maintains it and all of that for our members. And as a community solar project, members can buy a share, or think of it as buying the output of one of those solar panels at the co-op, and then each month on your electric bill, for your pro rata share, those kilowatt hours that come from that solar farm, you get a credit on your electric bill. So what's nice about it, and what members really like about it, is you don't have to worry about it, the solar. You don't have to put it on your roof or use up your space in your yard. We maintain it, take care of it. It's a 20-year program. So for 20 years, the members who signed up for that program and who bought a share or bought a panel will receive those bill credits on their electric bill. We've done 2 small community solar projects there. And then what was really neat too, since we had already built a couple of solar arrays there locally in Pelican Rapids, our G&T, Great River Energy, they wanted to get a small solar farm built at each one of the 28 distribution co-ops, like us. Lake Region's one of those 28 across the state. And so we actually built the 3rd unit that's there for Great River Energy and got paid to do that because our employees, because our employees already knew how to do it, and we did it very efficiently because it's right there at our headquarters. We already had the land, we had most of the equipment that it took, and we just cross-trained people and embraced it, and has been very successful. Also in solar, we've moved on. We also have a program called Go West Solar. So as an individual homeowner or business, if you're interested in a ground mount solar system, a small system at your home, your farm, your business, we actually install those for our members. So if anybody's out there thinking about solar, what we want to do...
I can build my own little plant?
Yeah, at your house or your business, and we'd build it for you. And what's so important is for us is we really try to we want to be the local go-to energy services provider, if that makes sense. Whether it's solar, wind, LED lighting, new technology. Again, as a member-owned cooperative, we want to have a lot of that expertise local for our members that they can draw upon and come in and talk to us about what they're thinking, about what their needs are, and we can help develop solutions for them. We'd much prefer that rather than some out-of-state company coming in and doing projects. So very, very locally focused.
So solar is profitable nowadays, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't invest, yeah? So you can make money with the solar energy.
Yeah, it's a very small portion of our supply. It's very small,
in
but
general,
it's
profitable.
becoming.
So if I invest 1,000, I get 1,010.
For us, it's more cost effective than profitable. Probably is a way to think of it. So on our latest solar project, and this is under construction right now. Perhaps you've heard about it. It's this one single wind turbine, a GE 2-megawatt turbine, and 500 kilowatts of solar that's now under construction just to the south and west of our headquarters there. And it's scheduled to come online soon. So that's a much bigger scaled renewable energy project. And what's so cool about it is not only is it local energy production, but it's renewable, and it's going to help us save money. It's a cheaper, more cost-effective supply right now than what we're buying from other places. So it's got a lot of value. It's able to connect directly into the local electrical distribution grid that, oh, by the way, our members already own. Mm-hmm. And so there's no transmission involved, no overhead involved. Mm-hmm. It's direct
tie it in,
plugging, if you will, right into the system we already own at a lower cost.
Interesting.
And so we're pretty excited about that and looking forward to that coming online here, in the next month or so.
So that is really interesting, because I moved here roughly 10 years ago, and always fascinated me because we have been building wind parks in the North Sea or in the Baltic for decades now, and I find that we don't have enough wind parks, especially like in a rural area like North Dakota. I mean, we should have, with those winds, there should be fields. I mean, nobody's out there anyway. So I never understood. I always thought like, well, is it too expensive to build this? But you just claimed that a 2 kilowatt turbine, megawatt, you said, sorry about that, is that megawatt an hour, or like
its capacity is 2 megawatts. And on this project, one thing I want to point out is we don't actually own the wind tower and the solar. A wind developer from Minnesota called Joule Energy owns it, financed it, is constructing it, and it's under construction right now. All we're doing is buying the output, the electricity that's going to come out of that unit. So every kilowatt hour that comes out of that, we're purchasing that under a purchase power contract.
It must be profitable for that person. So
it is.
It must be. So
they'll get a rate of return.
Right.
And that's their piece of it. We're just buying the output. So all the construction risk and all of that is on the developer, not Lake Region.
What I don't but like, I can think as a businessman. In fact, I am a businessman. Yeah. So I hear, very interestingly, first of all, there's a lot of land here. I mean, there's a lot of farmers here. We just own land just because we have hunting land. Like, why, if I have 85 acres of hunting land, which I use 80, so I have 5 acres available. Well, I can put a food plot there, but those solar panels probably don't move. Yeah, we know that. So I think a deer wouldn't be scared of a solar panel. Most likely not. So why don't we install? Why don't I become a grid provider or distributor? Can I just build 5 acres of solar panel and sell you would it make sense?
The key for that size of a project you'd have to find somebody to buy that output.
Yeah.
And so if it made sense, we'd talk to you about that and go through a process to evaluate that. But what's really the trend right now in our state, in our nation, the renewables are becoming much more prevalent, obviously.
Yeah.
For us, for example, you mentioned North Dakota. I mean, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, a lot of good wind resources there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of very large wind farms out there now, and they continue to be built and will continue to grow.
Okay.
Right now, 25% of our electricity comes from a renewable source. Back in 2007, there was some pretty significant legislation passed into law here in Minnesota that required us to have 25% of our electricity come from a renewable source.
In 2007
by the year 2025. We've actually exceeded that
already.
And our power supplier, Great River Energy, they've set a corporate goal to be 50% renewable by 2030. So
wow.
There's a big change going on in the future. There's going to be more wind, more solar, more renewables, certainly than in the past.
I am so surprised. In fact, I don't know if we're too ignorant to know that is really relevant news to me. 25% is way more than I thought. I didn't even know. It's my fault that I wasn't educated on that legislation. But I'm very happy to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm actually very happy to hear that there's a energy producer that they have their own goal to be 50%. I mean, that's just good news.
I think one really important part of our energy future is we like to call it an all-of-the-above strategy. our electricity can't all come from one source or two sources. We need to have a very diverse portfolio, and right now that consists of coal-fired power plants, natural gas power plants, certainly wind and solar, but you really need those more baseload type plants as well, and a nice diversified portfolio. That all of the above strategy, as we call it.
Yeah, no, of course to guarantee the reliability also. No, I understand that. So you're in the process of growing your renewable production. You just mentioned 1/3 solar panel field, right, by the wind tower. So it's 1, 2, and it's a third.
At our headquarters, there's 3 small solar arrays, and then at the new project, this wind and solar hybrid project, as we call it, it's one single turbine and then a solar field that works together.
Right. Okay.
So it's more efficient, we think, doing it as a hybrid. There's some savings on the infrastructure costs. One interconnection back into our local grid instead of 2, that type of thing. So there's some efficiencies there with this hybrid unit. It's a fairly unique project. It's a GE turbine and technology, and so they're starting to bring these hybrids out into the marketplace, and we're one of the first ones to do something like this.
Interesting. And then visioning, I mean, we look 80 years back, so we have a 10-year plan, at least 20-year plan. Is there more to expect in the next decade? Is there visioning good intentions? Do we have goals to?
Yeah, specific to renewables. Yeah, definitely some. Start at the top, if you will, with Great River Energy. They have already set this goal to get to 50% renewables by the year 2030, which, in the utility world, that's in planning. That seems like a way off, but it's really not. I mean, these are long-term assets, long-term decisions. So we have very long-term plans.
And you too, locally, do you plan on building another turbine maybe in another 5 years?
That's a very good possibility. We don't have a specific project in mind for next year or the year after, but once we get this hybrid project done and up and running and evaluate that, we'll continue to look for opportunities for more renewables and other energy services also for our members. We're not only doing renewables like we've been discussing, but we've also done a lot of other things, including trying to bring a natural gas service to areas within our service territory who have never had basic natural gas service in their area or in their community. So
building pipeline?
Yeah, we're putting infrastructure in the ground. So natural gas lines to bring it to small towns who have never had a natural gas supply before. Towns like Deer Creek, towns like Dent, Parker's Prairie, Miltona.
Is that conversion then really efficient? To convert is it for converting my heating?
Yeah, mostly.
Is it better?
If somebody's, perhaps, for example, if they're maybe heating their house with propane, for example, it could be cheaper to do it with natural gas and not have to have a tank and all that stuff.
Propane,
yeah.
So that would be cheaper.
Generally,
natural gas is
generally yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot the propane. I thought they had electric heat, for example.
Some people do. Yep, that's a good option too, of course. And so
is converting to gas also more efficient? Do you think that electric heaters are
it's
less
much
efficient?
more. If you have an electric heating system, it's generally more difficult to convert to a natural gas, because what you have to replace. And so I think what we're seeing is mostly people switching from propane to natural gas.
Sure.
As natural gas prices have been so low in recent years, you're seeing more and more natural gas coming out into rural areas and these small towns that never had it before.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of a neat process to go. We talked earlier about the starting of the electric cooperative. Well, in a way, bringing natural gas to areas that have never had it was someone like that. Going in and talking to community leaders, city council members, that type of thing about bringing natural gas to their community, talking to some of the members of the co-op who will be served with natural gas, and when we first started meeting with communities and some of our members about should we do this, and what would you think if your electric cooperative started bringing natural gas to certain areas in our territory that it makes economic sense to do so, the response was very positive, that the members wanted us to do that and thought we had the wherewithal to do it. And so we've done some of these small towns, small projects, and I learned a lot about the natural gas business, and so far it's been a success. I think the people who have our service are very, very pleased with that, and we'll continue to grow it with small projects, each year as we go forward.
Interesting. I think you mentioned earlier advising, consulting services that your group does, also helping people find better, efficient solutions. Is that true? Like, so do you have a source where only members, or can anyone contact you and say, hey, could you help me, like, with an cost evaluation, or I'm not sure. Like, what can you describe that?
Sure.
Service?
We have what we call our energy services professionals, and so it's just for our members, of course.
Oh, okay.
But so if they're looking at needing to make an upgrade to their heating system or their lighting system, for example, they can call in.
New construction.
And new construction as well. But they can call in and talk to our folks, and maybe come in as well, look at different, electric heating options and that type of thing. Okay. LED lighting. We've got a small little kind of online LED store, if you will.
Okay.
And the LED was, we got into that mostly to help our members understand that conversion and potential savings and that type of thing. Again, just a local, source of information. In addition to being able to go online or go into a Menards and look at different LED lights and things, just really trying to again be that local go-to energy services provider and trusted energy advisor, if you will, for our members as technology continues to change. And we can stay on top of the changes and technology for our members. We really think that's a pretty good strategy going forward, and we've been embracing that as new things come to the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. I think we learned a lot about a small but big player in our lives. I really never thought about actually being in the dark 80 years ago. And yes, we live rural. We build our own wells because we don't have a water line. But electricity arrived only 80 years ago. And now we have all our TVs running and our so-called internet connectivity, and that's all due to you when we live rural here. So, I appreciate very much this dialogue. We learned a lot. Anything else you wanted to share? Did I forget anything?
I just, if you don't mind, just, we've got, about 72 employees, and you think about what they do, whether it's calling in to talk to us about energy options, or the linemen out there working in those storms. I mean, we live in an area that gets we get a variety of weathers patterns, and from ice storms to tornadoes to, of course, thunderstorms and things. And it's just amazing what they do when there is a power outage. And we've done a lot of things to reduce our outages. We've cut them. They're down about 50% over the last decade because we keep investing and reinvesting and modernizing our grid and keeping those trees cleared away from the power lines. But boy, those employees, when they're out there working in those dangerous conditions with electricity and in middle of storms at night and that type of thing, they just do an awesome job. And really proud of them, and I think the members really appreciate what they do too. That's what all of our feedback says, and just want to shout out to our employees for the great job they do.
I think they deserve that.
And the other thing with our employees is, they've also been very open and embraced these new things that we've done, because we have done, as a cooperative, moved beyond the traditional things. And it's not easy in an organization to bring on all those new things and get the people to get training and that type of thing to learn how to do these new things. But they've really embraced that, and it's made a really big difference for our cooperative in the value that we can bring to our members in the local communities.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope maybe to even get you involved in our expo in March. I'll bug you in a little bit later with maybe a little display, or maybe you come and speak about solar and renewable energy again to our audience. And thank you very much for all the content and input you did. Have a wonderful weekend ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, this was already our newest episode of the Lake Life Weekend podcast. We sure hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again next week with another great guest and updates. Always check out our website, lakelifeweekend.com, and if you have some comments, please feel free to email us at hello@lakelifeweekend.com, and you have a wonderful weekend ahead.